Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Wherever you're listening around the world, a very warm welcome from London in the UK. Here is today's news in electric cars and the future of transport. My name is Martin Lee, and this is your EV News Daily for Wednesday, the 21st of February, 2018. On the podcast today, coming up, we'll talk about the electric hypercars that are coming, and we'll pick a little bit on Australians, but just a little. However, first of all, we'll start with news about a possible new commercial vehicle that's electrified. Now, stay with me. I know this isn't a very sexy way to start the podcast today. I promise the next story, it will all be speed and smoke and wheel spin. However, I think commercial vehicles are really important to electrify because they do a lot of miles in places where pollution is high, like city centres. Now, your own car might sit on the driveway all night long, sit outside work all day. Commercial vehicles are on the go all the time. And that's the important bit, last mile situations around our towns and cities where pollution levels are high. They cause respiratory disease, and we need to get all of those electrified as soon as possible. Now, have you seen the new London black cabs? And if you haven't, pause the podcast and go and watch the fully charged episode recently where Jonny Smith drives the new London black cab from the LEVC, the London EV company. I know I keep going on about Jonny. That's 2 days in a row now on this podcast. I don't want to kiss him much, but he is a legend. And so, once you know all about the London black cab and the Chinese EV owner Geely, you won't be surprised to hear they've got their sights set higher than just London's black cabs. They've ploughed hundreds of millions into the range extended black cab, and it costs just £10 more a week to lease than the regular diesel black cab, but it can save you £100 a week in fuel. Well, now Geely want to use that platform and powertrain to change the taxi dimensions into a van, add a passenger seat up front, and bring it to the market. Now, spy shots on motor1.com show it heavily camouflaged, but with the unmistakable front end. And according to them, the conversion process is costing just small change, £42 million. Which, for a big automaker launching a new vehicle, that's nothing really. Well, next, all right, look, I did promise something faster than a light van. What about a Koenigsegg, maker of the insane sports cars from the mad hypercar brain of Christian von Koenigsegg? The Koenigsegg, they have a new plug-in hybrid called the Regera, which he says is on the bleeding edge of EV technology. Now, according to Left Lane News, he was so impressed by the instant torque of the Model S that he drove that he's incorporated batteries into the drivetrain of the next hypercar from Koenigsegg. All right, so yes, it comes with a 5-litre dirty V8, but it also has 3 electric motors and electric acceleration only up to 30 miles an hour. And he says it's the most advanced EV in the world, but that bit doesn't get the headlines because of the 5-litre internal combustion engine. Now, the battery pack is only 70 kilos, but it helps generate 700 brake horsepower. And as for a full electric version of a future Koenigsegg, he says that technology is getting better and better very rapidly. He doesn't rule it out. Okay, on to Mitsubishi, makers of the wildly popular Outlander, and a moderate upgrade to what is a very important car, I think. The new Outlander plug-in hybrid will be available from autumn in Europe. It has been a huge success over here. 100,000 of them sold here in Europe. I think 140,000 worldwide, so it's mostly based in sold in Europe, right? For people that want to add a few electrons to the dino juice that they're burning. For the new model, they're going to increase battery performance by 15%. But, don't brace yourself. In real numbers, that means a battery pack that goes from 12 kilowatt hours to a dizzy 13.8 kilowatt hours. However, look, it's welcome. It's a popular car. I see them all the time here in the UK. A few of them plugged into rapid chargers, which doesn't please everybody. And it's a very handy car to plug in, though, because it does use the growing CHAdeMO fast chargers. Although, like I say, plug-in hybrid uses a rapid charger. Will probably get me hate mail. And Mitsubishi want to show that they are dead serious about full electric cars. So fresh from the Tokyo Motor Show, they're heading to the Geneva Motor Show early March with the E-Evolution concept. There's too many E's in that. The E-Evolution concept, which will not so much be a car they're going to make, but lay out their vision and their thinking over the next few years. They think 4-wheel drive, 3 motors, and electronically controlled torque vectoring, according to this press release. And I've no idea what that is, but you know what? I definitely need some of that in my life. I can't believe at the moment I don't have electronically controlled torque vectoring. It sounds essential. Right. Talking of Geely earlier, according to gasgoo.com, Geely have confirmed they're going to introduce 20 new energy vehicles by 2020. Now, to put that in perspective, we're doing this in early 2018, right? That's 22 months away that there'll be 20 new models on the market. That's practically a new model every month. And everyone's so used to the pace of EV news lately, it's not even front page news. In fact, it got trumped on today's podcast by a van to be the top story. In 2018, watch out for the M Grand EV 450 and the M Grand plug-in hybrid, amongst many more to be released today. Oh, as long as you're in China. That's the caveat with this. 2/3 of their range in the future will be plug-ins and hybrids. About a third will be pure electric cars. Now, the first of 2 stories now about oil. And tomorrow in Germany, their top court could hand a landmark ruling down to local courts, which will rule on diesels and accelerate EV growth in Germany, the land of the diesel. Now, an environmental group called DUH, or DER, sued Stuttgart and Düsseldorf over levels of nitrous oxide and particulates in the air, breaking EU rules. Well, local courts then ruled that the worst diesels could only be used on light pollution days, which the German states appealed against the local court. So tomorrow we'll hear from their top court if that ban stands or whether the appeal worked. Now look, if the ban stands, it could wipe huge values off of diesel cars, off of diesel makers, and persuade more people to look at driving electric cars. Now, secondly, we'll talk about BP, or British Petroleum, and they've released their annual Energy Outlook report. In this, they say that travel demand will double between today and 2040, and that's mainly due to increases in personal mobility in places like China and India. BP also predicts today's 3 million electric vehicles will grow to 320 million by 2040. Being in the electric car business is about to get very good. And also, BP say that's because of self-driving cars. They're all going to be electric thanks to lower maintenance costs and the ability to recharge themselves by parking themselves over induction pads to recharge the batteries wirelessly, right? In 2016, the total fuel demand from cars was 18.7 million barrels of oil per day. That was a fifth of the total oil demand. And I sometimes forget, I think that cars and vans and lorries are so much a bigger part of how we are polluting the world than they really are. A fifth of oil demand was from vehicles. It just seems like that's insanely low. BP also predict electric cars will be driven 2.5 times more than than combustion engine cars. They're going to be more reliable. You'll drive them more. You'll drive them for longer, and the batteries will be fine, and they won't take as much maintenance. Now, finally, if you listen to an EV podcast, I'm guessing you're a fan of electric cars. But just so that you and I don't end up in our little echo chamber together, banging the battery drum, let's take a look at today's Sydney Morning Herald newspaper. They point out that it's not all well with EVs because they've done some maths. So let's look at it. Charging your electric car from the grid in Australia, they say that if you drive a Tesla, and the paper don't say which model, but just about it doesn't really matter, I suppose, you would emit 168 grams of CO2 per kilometre. That's versus a Toyota Corolla, which does 178, slightly higher, grams of CO2 per kilometre. A Renault Zoe would do just 121, but they point out a Toyota Prius will do 84 grams of CO2 per kilometre. So they're arguing drive a hybrid or drive a Prius, and actually they point out that there are a ton of ICE cars on the market that beat that. So as they've done the maths, let's do our own maths and let's look at that. They say if you charge it from the grid, and I'm talking to you, any Aussies that are listening to the podcast, that's high, right? Because your grid is disgusting. I mean, it is dirty. It is just dirty with a few more R's in there. Are you literally burning whatever you can get your hands on? The average greenhouse gas intensity is 910 kilograms of CO2 per megawatt hour from your power stations. That is insanely high. And you are one of the sunniest countries on the planet. Why hasn't everybody got solar panels in Australia? You see them everywhere here in the UK. And this is a country that officially has 5 sunny days per year. Every other day it's cloudy in this country and it rains, and we've got solar and it works. What are you doing, Australia, to have such a disgusting grid? Well, the UK grid intensity for summer last year, 2017, was 216 kilograms of CO2 per megawatt hour. That compares to Aussie of 910. Get some solar, Australia. If you go to a country like Norway or Iceland or Paraguay, right, they all have grid intensity of less than 20 kilograms of CO2 per megawatt hour, because they harness what they've got lots of, like geothermal in some of those places. And those emissions above that the article talked about, the Camry and the Prius, right, those figures are the tailpipe emissions. They don't take into account all the energy it took up to dig up your friendly T-Rex and refine him and transport him and burn him in a car, which is massively inefficient. So rant over. But let's remember, there's plenty of naysayers out there who do not want to drive electric cars. Get some solar and harness that bloomin' sunshine that we'd love some of here. Well, thank you for listening today. Hope you enjoyed it. We'd love to spread the word about electric cars, so please do share this with at least one person who might be interested. A reminder, listen to all of our previous podcasts on iTunes. You can subscribe and rate while you're there for free. And if you want to, you can download our brand new Alexa skill. It's a briefing, so you can say to your Amazon Echo device, Alexa, play my flash briefing, and it will play you the latest EV news from your connected device. Say hi to us on Twitter. We're at EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow.